I wanted to start with a quick opening remarks about our volunteer program. We're really glad to have you all here with us. We've done volunteer events at EDC before, but we're really looking to build an ongoing program now where we get to know you, you get to know us, and we get to figure out what types of activities work best and are most effective when we're working together. As a sort of policy organization, we do a lot of research, so we're not going to be offering volunteer opportunities that we don't think are going to have a meaningful impact. So we're really going to be paying attention to the legislation and things that are going on, and we'll only be calling in volunteers when we do think you can have a really significant impact. So we hope you're excited about that, and we want to hear from you as we go on. After this event, we'll have a feedback form, and after we've done a few events, we'll have a sort of open meeting all together where you can share your experiences, some ideas you might have for future events, because we do want to build this in a collaborative way that works for us, but also works for all the participants. I'm also going to do a land acknowledgement, but I'm going to do, rather than reading sort of the rote that is read every time, I thought I would connect it a little bit to what we're talking about today. So I'm going to talk about the Indigenous groups that will be impacted by the 413 highway. Wow. So it's ideally if people could mute themselves for now, that would be great, and then we'll be able to unmute when we have the Q&A session. So the Mississauga of the Credit First Nation and what is on this map as the Petun, but are now known as the Huron-Wendat, are the groups that are most impacted by this highway, and they've both submitted already to the Impact Assessment Agency, and I'll talk a little bit more about their concerns as we go on. The Petun was a historical group that was there traditionally, but they became the Wendat, and then a lot of the Huron-Wendat nation has now moved. Some are in Oklahoma, and some are in Quebec. So they're still concerned about this highway, however, because they have a lot of archaeological sites and history in that area that could be disturbed by the highway. So today's speakers, I'm more of a host, I guess, and a bit of a speaker, but I'm Matt Lepelke. I'm the engagement manager at Environmental Defense. And Deb Schulte is with us as well. She's a former MP from King-Vaughan, former Minister of Seniors, and she did a lot of lobbying to get the 413 or the 413 killed the first time. So we're really glad to have her here, and she's going to give us a lot of insight on how to do it again, hopefully. So just a quick background, planning for the 413, which is sometimes referred to as the GTA West Corridor, began in the mid-2000s. The first environmental assessment was shelved or paused in 2015, and the project was officially canceled by the Liberal government in 2018. Fun fact about the 413 name is that it was initially known as the GTA West Corridor, and it was activists at Environmental Defense who decided to name it the 413 because it's a 400 series highway. That number is in fact coming up, but 13 is an unlucky number. So we hope that part of the name will stick. And now the government is using it itself. So our campaigns were effective enough that we managed to name the highway. So we're pleased about that. And then we're not pleased about the fact that the project, though, was revived in 2019 by the current government with the environmental assessment being restarted. So some of the impacts of this highway, as I mentioned, the Mississauga of the Credit First Nation and the Huron-Wendat Nation have concerns that the project will impact their archaeological and burial sites. And the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation have also stated that the project would limit their ability to undertake traditional practices such as harvesting and gathering medicines. We have reached out to them as part of our campaign, but they mostly prefer to submit formally on their own. So we haven't collaborated with them much, but we are sharing what they've put into the government submissions themselves, what their concerns are about the highway. There are a number of other impacts. The highway will pave over 2,000 acres of farmland and 400 acres of greenbelt. And that's without accounting for the additional sprawl that will likely be triggered by the highway. It will cut through a section of the Nashville Conservation Reserve, which is a really lovely area near Vaughan. Maybe it's in Vaughan. I'm not sure. It's on the edge there. It's in Vaughan, yeah. And the current government chose that route. There was a really interesting Toronto Star article that you might want to look up and read. They chose that route to protect a proposed suburb, so a subdivision, not even a place where people are currently living. They chose instead to go straight through the conservation reserve. So it gives you a sense of how much they're taking the environment into account in their planning. And then our report, one of our reports also found that the highway would release 17 million tons of additional carbon emissions by 2050 because of the increased volume of traffic. Because as we all know, as there's more roads, it just encourages more people to drive, and it will increase the greenhouse gas emissions in Ontario. There are also endangered species impacts. We have a report that will be coming out soon that found that at least 29 federally listed species at risk would be negatively affected by the highway. And this highway will also cross 85 river and streams, or there will be 85 river and stream crossings. I think a couple get crossed twice. So it's not 85 different rivers and streams, but we do know that salt on highways, and there's a lot of pollution from vehicles that builds up on the road surface. And then when it rains, that gets washed into rivers and streams. So this highway will have a serious impact on water quality in Southern Ontario. So the point that we're at now in the process is that the highway was designated for review in May 2021. And the Impact Assessment Agency is currently waiting for a second draft of what's called the initial project description from the province. And that basically gives all their engineering documents, their early route maps, any assessments that they've done, any plans they have to mitigate impacts, all kind of packaged together and given to the Impact Assessment Agency, but they haven't provided all of that documentation yet. So the process is kind of at a pause right now. Once that's received, there will be a formal comment period, and we hope people will comment then, and we're actually likely to have a volunteer event around that as well. And then the agency will later decide what level of review, if any, is required. So the different options there are, they can basically send it back to the province and let them do whatever level of environmental assessment they would do. They can do an agency review, which is where they review it internally, and they can do a full panel review where they bring in external experts. And we're hoping to get the full panel review. That's our goal. It will take probably 3 to 5 years for that process to be completed. So it will give us more time to organize. It will be the most thorough assessment. We think it's the best option. The impact assessment process is long. We're in step 1 of the 21 steps in phase 1 of the 5 phases. So we're right at the very, very beginning. But the first phase is planning phase, is where most public input is gathered. So it's important for us to get involved right now. And then the impact statement, if they decide to do one of the 2 agency reviews, either the full panel or the review by the agency, you'll see phase 2 is the impact statement. The proponent, in this case the province, would submit an impact statement to the agency. Phase 3, the agency will conduct its impact assessment, whether that's an agency review or the full panel review. Stage 4 is the decision making, and that's when the impact assessment goes back to Guilbeault and to the cabinet. And so that's sort of where the big political decision happens, what they do with the impact assessment. And stage 5 is sort of them monitoring that the project is done in alignment with whatever Guilbeault decides. So those are the phases of the impact assessment, the federal impact assessment process. And the criteria that they use to determine if they'll do a full panel review are federally listed endangered species, climate, treaty rights. Those are all under federal jurisdiction. So even though a highway is nominally provincial jurisdiction, all of those issues are federally in federal jurisdiction. So it's very appropriate for them to step in at this point. And you see, I have a little snippet from the Impact Assessment Act there. It says that public interest is one of the things that impacts whether they do a referral to a review panel. And public concerns related to those effects is really right there in the legislation. So that's an important thing for you to be able to remind your MP of, that they might say, oh, the process is already going on, or it's a bureaucratic process. But it's right there in the legislation that public concern is part of the bureaucratic process. So you're well within your rights, and they're within their duty to forward your concerns both to the Impact Assessment Agency and to other levels of government and to Guilbeault and their other fellow MPs. So I just want people to remember that we have heard some people have commented to sent an email to their MPs or even met with them, and they sort of gave that line that, oh, it's already in the process. It's not really my business. So we wanted to remind people that, in fact, public concern is part of the process, and they should be passing that on. And just a little bit about the political context and why we do think there's a lot of value in talking to MPs about this. Recently, the Alberta Appeal Court, the Impact Assessment Agency was reviewing a different project in Alberta, and the provincial court ruled that this particular law violates the Constitution and sort of gives the federal government too much power. The federal government is confident that when it gets to the Supreme Court, it'll be ruled that they are in their right and that the laws are valid. But if they choose to put a full review on the 413, Ontario might get involved in the case too. So there will be a lot of pressure and discussion within the cabinet about, oh, we do want to do a review of this, but is it worth these risks? So it's very important for them to hear that the public is on side with this and that the public wants this review to happen. So that's just a bit of the sort of background and the current moment to be aware of and to see why it's important that we all lobby our MPs and let them know. So now I'm gonna open up the discussion with Deb. I'm gonna ask her some questions that we sort of workshopped a bit that we think will be very valuable to you. I'll probably turn off my slide so you can see us because this slide isn't that informative. And then after our discussion, we'll come back. I have a couple little sort of housekeeping things, and then we'll open it up to everyone for more open questions. So, how do I spotlight? I guess once we start talking, it will spotlight us.
Maybe.
Yeah, they're perfect. Excellent. You
Okay.
spotlighted for me. So excellent. Thanks.
Excellent.
So yeah, hi Deb. I guess I have a few questions here, and the first one I think that people might be wondering about is how long will it take to get an appointment, and what can people say to ensure that you do get an appointment? Because I understand that MPs are very busy and they get a lot of requests. So how do people get themselves in there?
Absolutely. Well, first, before I even get into the answer to that, I'd like to just thank all the potential volunteers that are on the call today. This is really fantastic that you're stepping up to do the important work of lobbying and advocating for your community and your riding. I just can't say enough about how important it is, the work that you're going to do. They need to hear from you. I can tell you that the development industry, the union groups, they've been very active. I remember in the previous election, there was a lot of people knocking on my door, not so much the environmentalists, maybe they already knew I had that well covered, but the other side was very, very active, not just for me, but my colleagues before the last election to say how much the 413 was required to move ahead. And that was union groups as well, because they see the potential in housing and other sort of things and jobs. So they so this is a big issue, and we need to have the public speak as well, not just for jobs and development. We need to have the public come and speak about their concerns for their health, for the environment. Nobody's at the table for the environment if residents and groups like yourselves don't step up and bring that attention to light for MPs. So this is really important. I just wanted to say thank you to everyone that's with us today to take the time. And this is great because I'll share what I know. And of course, I'm just one voice, but I had the pleasure of serving for 6 years and had a lot of very great meetings, very successful meetings. And many of them were fantastic because they were educating me about things that I wasn't really that informed about. And that's what it's all about. It's letting your MP know that that this is important to their community. It's important to you and stakeholders that are going to be voting. So that's really, if you can get that message across, how important it is to you that you're not alone, that you are representing larger group, and then we'll get into that in a bit. But if you can let them know that, this is why it's important that they learn what you learn, because if they knew what you knew, they would, they would make sure that they did some advocacy, because they have a role to play. And like you said, many think that they don't, because it's an impact assessment agency and that they really don't have a role, but they do, because the minister is going to listen very carefully to Ontario Caucus. And Ontario Caucus are the representatives for the residents in Ontario, need to hear from the residents. So again, thank you for what you're doing. How hard is it to get an appointment? Well, it depends on a couple of things. One is, what role does the MP that you're approaching have? So, are they chair of a committee? Are they a minister? Are they a parliamentary secretary? Because that depends on how heavy their load is. You have to remember that when the House of Commons is sitting, it's usually 3 weeks on and 1 off. So if you're trying to do a meeting in person, you're going to have to try to work around that schedule when they're back in the riding. And, they're back at usually all the weekends. They're back for the weeks that the House of Commons isn't sitting. But the fact that we've had COVID and a little bit of a change in the procedures in the House of Commons, there is a virtual element. So not everybody's always in the House of Commons when the House of Commons is sitting. So that's why it's important to call the office and find out, what is the MP schedule, and then, work around that. So the elements are, what time of year you're trying to meet with them. Is the House of Commons sitting? What's that schedule? What are the obligations that that MP has? Because you're going to have to try to work around that. And then, how relevant is the issue for the MP? Do they think that they have a big stake in it, or that people in their riding care a lot about it? And that's where, if they think it really doesn't matter to them, and then, and somebody's just asking about, you mean MPP? No, I'm saying MP. And even though the 413 is a provincial responsibility, and I just was reading that in the chat, the federal impact assessment is taking a look at it, and that is a federal jurisdiction when it comes to endangered species, when it comes to Indigenous rights and considerations, and, as Matt's already said, for climate change. So there is definitely a role for federal. And that's something that you need to impart to the MP when you're trying to set up this meeting. You have to get over that hurdle for some people. Yes, it's relevant because these are the elements that MPs or the federal government has a play in. So what else? I think that's, pretty much, the things that are going to be a challenge. And the way you get past that is to make sure you're connecting with their interests. Is it environment? Is it climate change? Is it smart growth? Do they care about transportation, affordable housing? What is it that the MP's been working on? So there's a little bit of work that you might need to do. What committees do they sit on? What parliamentary committees are they running? Do they run a caucus? So that you can connect with them on their level. What are they concerned about, and how does this highway and what we're advocating for impact on that? And there's a lot of connections if you're looking at, climate change, smart growth, transportation needs, the change to how we're going to support our economy. There's a lot of connectors. You just need to find the ones that are going to resonate with that MP based on the work that MP is doing. I don't know if that's too much to say there and people don't know, but it doesn't take too long to find out what the MP's been working on. And even if you work with their office, you can get some of that information ahead, and that will help inform you on how you can connect and resonate with the MP and get that meeting that's so important.
Thanks. Yeah, that's so great. And I think the point about researching a bit about your MP and connecting it to what they're already working on is really a good one. And it's a good way to sort of get it, as you said, get in the door and get them to say, oh, this is relevant. I should take this meeting. So
Mhm.
that's great. So once we've gotten the meeting, we've called a couple times. It's probably a bit of work to get the meeting, but what are a few key pieces of advice that you would give someone to prepare for a successful meeting?
Okay. Well, one of the things that you need to do is, at the beginning of a meeting, you want to introduce yourself, and that comes back to trying to build a relationship with the MP so that you have that opportunity to connect with them on a more regular basis on things of common interest. So it isn't just, you're going to do this one time and then you're never going to see them again. You want to build a relationship where they know when you call that you've got something important to say and they need to listen. So that is where it's about setting a context. How do you fit in the frame of what's important? Do you have, where's your background? How have you been working involved in the community? Are there other groups that are supporting you? Have you spent a little bit of time talking to the environmental groups that are working in your riding? or ratepayer groups that are in your riding that may have already put out a statement that they're against this highway, and you want to bring that information to your MP to say, you know what, it's not just me, there's a whole lot of groups, and here's the groups that I've been working with. So that might take a little bit of time just to do some work in your riding and find out who else has been making statements about this. Do they have it on their Facebook page? Have they made a deputation at council when this has gone to council? And find out who else in your riding has a stake in this and has been potentially either not necessarily going to the MP, but going to other politicians and making their voices known. And even if they haven't, you can bring them onto onto side with you, say, like, you might not have said anything before, but if you're against this, why don't you add your voice to mine? And I'll be able to say when I go to the MP that ratepayer group such and such is on side and it doesn't want this highway, or this environmental group or this youth group, from a school or from whatever's going on in your riding. So if you can connect those pieces, and then it just makes you stronger when you're coming to the table, because it's not just you talking, you're representing a larger group of people that MP is more inclined to want to pay attention to and build connections with. So that's important, that you set the stage, telling a little bit about yourself, your employment. Why is this important? Why is this issue important to you? And why should it be important to that MP? I think that's really important, that the MP needs to understand, why is this so important? First, to have time to have half an hour with you or longer if possible. And why should they put any investment in it? Why should they put some of their time when there is so many issues that they're being asked to consider and put their time to? Why is this one so important? So if you can kind of get prepared to set the stage of why this is important to that MP to pay attention to you, and who else in the community is with you and working with you, or at least standing with you, then that I think would be a powerful bit of advice on how to prepare for successful meeting, because that's going to make them sit up and really take notice.
All right, and then would you suggest bringing any kinds of materials, or?
Oh yeah. Absolutely, come prepared, right? Like, you should come prepared with your material. You should know what you're talking about. You should be prepared with potential negative questions that are or opposition that is going to come your way. And I think that, Matt, you've been very good at sort of potentially sharing with people what may be opposition. I was just having a conversation with one of my former colleagues today, and the first thing they said to me is like, Deb, we just had an election and Ford ran on this and he won. So like, it's, people must be in favor of it. Why would he win? And I said, well, there's a lot of reasons why people vote. And I don't think the highway was a particular, a major issue for a lot of people. There were a lot of other issues that people were concerned about. And so I don't think you can, count that as being the reason Ford got in. And I think that's why these meetings that all of you are going to have is so important, because they need to hear that the public's not in favor of this. And there, that's just one of many questions and pushbacks that you get. I mean, I had a similar experience when I was running, and I had union groups coming to me, these are jobs, these are really important jobs. Well, you know what, whether you're building a highway or a hospital or a bridge somewhere else, those are all jobs. That money doesn't have, just because you don't build a highway doesn't mean you don't put the money to other things, right? So there's jobs there. It doesn't have to be about the highway. But I think, they're thinking about growth. They're thinking about the opportunity for sprawl development. And so that's kind of where they were, seeing the dollar signs and the work for the next, 20 years, rather than just the project itself. But anyway, yeah, I think we had just had a question, could we have some of those opposition? I think that's something Matt and I could certainly, and I know Matt's probably familiar with most of the opposition questions because he's been working them. But yeah, we can share that with you as well as we get the presentation that you would want to bring forward. So come prepared for pushback. All right. Come prepared to share why this is so important to you and the community that MP represents. Those I think are the key things. And come come positive, even if you get pushback, this has been a long fight. I mean, I've been at this for 10 years, and Matt knows, it's an up and down kind of thing. And just because one MP is pushing back doesn't mean that you can't still have success there, or at least put questions in their mind and put pressure on them. But that's something that don't be concerned if it isn't all wonderful and the person's on side, because not all MPs are on side with this. I can tell you that for sure, because I was with most of them working this before I didn't get back in, and they're all over the map. So you're going to meet with different people that are not necessarily going to have an environmental bent, but what's important is this is not just all about the environment. There's so many factors. This is so wrong and egregious on so many fronts that I really think that if you're prepared and you've done your homework, then you can make a very good argument for stopping this highway and looking at other alternatives that are right in front of us with the 407 and other initiatives. So.
Great, thanks so much for that. So then, are there a few things that I should avoid in a meeting?
Well, yeah, I touched a little bit. You want to be positive, and you want to be strong, but you don't want to be aggressive or try to back your MP into a corner. I think you don't want to get to the point where they shut off or have to put up a defensive wall, right? That's really what you're trying to avoid. So even if you don't agree with them, I think you need to just sort of question, okay, so well then, like, did you know about this? Try to open them up rather than have them build a wall, because once that happens and they close off, you probably never see them again, right? So, and that's not what you want to do. You want to have a conversation where even if they are opposition or opposing you, that you can have a dialogue and express the reasons why they may want to reconsider. And so that's where you have to also come prepared, right? With that kind of ability to back and forth. You're wanting to go there to build a relationship with them. It's not just, I think you want to try to build a respectful relationship where they're going to respect you and you're going to respect them. And so that is kind of where you have to be careful on the dialogue and the pushing. Be strong, be knowledgeable, be positive, and but don't put them up against a wall, because you're not going to win that one, and then you'll lose the chance to re-engage with them, and it might, this is not something that's a one hit wonder. This is going to probably take us a little while, right? So as you said, it could be several years, so you don't want to close that door if you don't have to. Okay, you also need to be careful, because they're going to give you a time, and typically I think you're going to get about half an hour. Okay, if you get an hour, bonus. That's a really good thing. It means that the MP is probably really interested. Typically you'll get a half an hour. Okay, half an hour goes very, very fast. It really can whip away if you are not focused. So stay focused on the topic at hand. Don't let the conversation go all over the place, because all of a sudden half an hour's gone, and then you haven't actually gotten the meat of the matter on the table, and you're being ushered out the door. So you want to make sure that stay at allotted time, be positive, and then just those are the things to avoid. Is just it's very easy for the person to potentially the MP to go off on a different track, and then you've lost your time, right? So you want to make sure that you stay focused on and bringing them back to the issue at hand if things start to go off sideways.
No, that's a great point. My next question was, how should I prepare for a meeting with an MP that I think is on side versus one that isn't? But we've kind of gotten into that, I guess. But do you have any other advice on kind of on that spectrum or in that
Touched
area?
on a bit of that. I think you really absolutely need to know who you're meeting with. So do a little bit of research ahead on sort of, even if you go back and look at their Facebook or their Twitter, what angle are they putting on any of this, if any at all? You want to find common ground. So the more you know about them and where their issues are, what they have been advocating for, and you can link that back to this initiative, the better. So if you can if you can be prepared and say, okay, you know what, I know you're really about affordable housing, and you probably think that, you know, this highway is going to suddenly open up a whole bunch of opportunity for affordable housing. However, if we look back in the last 20 years, we can see that highways create, like, first off, if you look at, just take Vaughan, for example, very little affordable housing. There's almost none. Even the condos that are being built in the Vaughan Metropolitan Center are, you know, 700 something thousand. Little townhomes are over 1 million. So just because they're going to build homes doesn't mean they're going to be affordable. And in fact, very rarely is this ever an issue. Like, you're never going to have affordable housing without your municipality involvement somehow with, you know, providing the land and then forcing a specific rent geared to income, sorry, kind of environment. It's not going to happen with the general market in the Vaughan area, in the Brampton North area, in the areas where this highway is going to service. So you can have a conversation with them about the issues that matter to them and bring the falsehoods about what this highway is going to provide, where they may think, oh, this is going, I can't go against this because this is affordable housing. And we're going to, it's like, no, there's been very little affordable housing in the GTA area built after 20 years of sprawl development. So that's not the answer. We have to do something else. So I'm just trying to say, be patient, do your preparation to figure out what that MP is triggered by, what they've been working on, and then try to connect them. And yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. Maybe would be the best to connect with an MP who's either against or for it, you know, because you've got the two possibilities.
Yeah, you mentioned a bit about municipal planning and municipal levels of government. How much are MPs following that? Like, is it worth doing some research into where the local council stands or that kind of thing and presenting to them? Or is that something they'll already know?
No, absolutely. They should be following what's going on with council and with the MPPs for sure. That would be what they should be doing. I mean, I'm not saying everybody does everything right, but they definitely should be very much following. So they should know what the local council and the regional council have voted on this particular issue, because they do a lot of communications with the municipalities. A lot of funding goes back and forth between federal and municipalities. The big projects are usually, they have funding from the feds. So this would be something that they should have a very good handle already on where their municipality is lying. And that is also helpful to bring to the table. So it's like, listen, you know, you need to understand, you know, the municipality is against this. And here's why, because they know that it's going to cost everybody more, because all the surrounding roads, the regional roads, have to be upgraded. And, you know, that's going to come at the cost of the municipality. So, you know, that, and they're not going to get any benefit from that. I mean, you're going to new houses, yes, but not necessarily is that you're not going to get enough taxes to pay for the impact, the negative impact on all the regional roads that are going to occur. And if you look at the studies, they already have that information. And that's why you're starting to see some of these municipalities changing their mind, because they're starting to get real information from their planning departments and from their transportation group saying, hey, wait a minute, this thing shows up, we're going to have to start, you know, expanding this and upgrading that. And oh my gosh, you know, there's a lot more money that we hadn't planned on using in the near term. And this is all going to have to come out of property taxes. So yeah, so I think that's important.
Yeah, because a lot of the municipalities along the route, almost all of them have come out either against the highway or they've come out in favor of having the impact assessment, the full federal review of the environmental impact. So I think that's it's good to remind them of that you're not alone. Your whole municipality agrees with that point. So
absolutely.
what else? Oh, I guess this is a kind of a key question, but what is a concrete ask that I should be making in this situation? Because an individual MP doesn't have power over the impact assessment agency. So when I'm presenting this information, what am I actually asking them to do?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned already, you know, MPs, so the minister the caucus has a lot of influence on the direction of government, right? So the Ontario caucus would be consulted on this. There's no question that, you know, the general mood of Ontario caucus, and the challenge is Ontario caucus is really large. There's a lot of people that wouldn't care one way or the other, except that I think, you know, if they look deeper at it, it's not just about the highway. It's about losing, you know, food security. It's about, you know, losing environmental lands and endangered species. So there's a lot that people from other parts of Ontario will have an interest in and potentially want to, you know, support or support the full. So what we're going to ask is for a full impact assessment, you know, full panel, right? And that, I think everybody should say that that's important based on the impacts that this highway is going to have. So that is what the minister is going to listen to, is what does his MPs in Ontario think? Are they willing to take the negative that you already raised from the Ford government versus the public wanting a full assessment done on this, so that you can really understand the impacts and how to mitigate them if at all possible, and if not, what other alternatives might there be for us to be able to move this either forward in some way, or, you know, maybe there's another alternative that can be done. And I think there is other alternatives, and we just need to dig a little deeper with the 407 and some of the other initiatives that have come up. So that is what he's going to listen to. Ontario caucus, he's going to listen to his minister colleagues, he's going to listen to his parliamentary secretary. So these are all people that you're going to ask your MP, if he's on side or she's on side with you, to advocate with. The caucus members in Ontario, the parliamentary secretary needs to hear from him. The minister and the ministers of cabinet need to hear from your MP, right? And that's what I think is really important right now, is to get the MPs to come together in Ontario and say, you know what, it's important that we have a full panel assessment, and we'll have to take it on the chin for whatever Ford's going to do. If he's going to fight us, let's take it to the wall. It's worth going to the Supreme Court to see whether this is going to hold up. It really is a test, and this is an important one to test it on, given the impacts. So.
Yeah, that's great. So I have another question here that is, how should I react if my MP presents some information I wasn't aware of? So it's a bit of the MP pushback, but if you really didn't prepare for something, or he or she sort of gives you something you've never heard,
yeah,
what do you recommend?
I think that, you know, just be honest. Say, listen, Neil, thank you very much for that. I've never heard of that before. If right away you know that there's some information that you have that counteracts that piece of information, I do think that you should say, you know, I wasn't aware of that. I'd like an opportunity to investigate that further. What I am aware of is this, which is, you know, a contrary piece, but I really do want to investigate that further. So, you know, can I have some time to research that, and then can we get back together to discuss this further? Because that is something I have had no you know, opportunity to be aware of. And I think, you know, if that is an element that they're kind of holding their position on, then you're going to need to say, I need time to take that back. I think, you know, thank them for sharing that, and ask for some time, because you don't want to be bumbling. You don't want to be making it up along the way, because they'll dismiss it, right? Dismiss you. You really want some time. You want to be able to dig into that, and then hopefully, you know, they can bring that back to a wider audience like yourselves and others to say, hey, did we know about this, right? I think we know about most of the stuff that's come up, but, you know, if something does come up, I think you just have to be respectful and say, okay, my information is contrary to that, and here's, you know, the backup data that I have, but can I research that a little further, and can we do a follow-up conversation on this to discuss that?
Okay, that sort of answers one of my other questions, was, is it appropriate for me to follow up after the meeting? But so I guess the answer is yes, and it's good to follow up, you would say.
I think it's absolutely essential. If you don't set a time frame of when you're going to follow up with them, it will go on a big pile potentially of work that needs to be done. But if there's a timeline, say, listen, we've talked about a lot here. I know there's a lot to digest. Is it possible that we can have a follow-up conversation in a month, in 2 months, in whatever you think is reasonable, or maybe once Ontario submits their submission, can we have a follow-up conversation on this? And then you want to kind of put them on notice that you want to hear from them about what they've done, because that will spur them to do something, right? I mean, if they know they have to come back to you and tell you what they have been able to do, then it makes them have to do something, because they have to come back and account to you about their actions. So I think it's really important that you set a follow-up. Now, there will be times where you'll have an MP that is no go, not interested, and all you can do is thank them very much for their time. And, you may have to go back and regroup, because, sometimes they'll just say, you know what, I don't believe in this. I don't think the impact assessment's right. Depending on if you have a conservative, I know they completely don't agree with the impact assessment new rules that we have in place. So depending on who you're talking to, you might not get a follow-up, but I think anybody that's going to want to work with you and want to, represent you, will be quite comfortable with a follow-up.
Great, thanks. So then my last question is, we're online here and it's convenient because we can all talk to each other from all around the province, but do you see advantages and disadvantages regarding in-person versus online meetings with your MP?
I'd say it would be best always to be in person, because you can catch the body language better. You get a better sense of the person when you're with them. And as I said before, I think the point is to try to build a bit of a relationship with them, so that you can go back to them for other things as well, not just for this issue, but they'll get to know you. And then when you want your next one on, the next initiative, they'll know who you are, and it'll be more appropriate and easier to get a meeting. But yeah, I don't think that that should be a problem. I think that's what it should. It's definitely it shouldn't be an issue.
Oh, good to know. Okay, so thanks so much. I'm gonna do a couple sort of housekeeping things about how we can support people who are doing their meetings and getting appointments, and then I'm going to open it up. I see a lot of questions in the chat already, and we'll have sort of an open discussion. So I'm just going to share my slides again for about 5 minutes, and then oh yeah, go ahead.
Actually, sorry. I think I forgot where I was going with that last one, and I just want to finish it up. It is always better to go in person, but it is easier to get a virtual meeting. So I think that what you'll have to kind of balance that, because if you can get an in-person one and they're here, you get it. But if it's a virtual one, don't not do it, because you might never get an in-person one based on how busy they are. So there's pluses and minuses to both. Virtual preferable, in-person preferable, but virtual, grab it if you've got one, right?
Take any meeting you can get.
That's where I was going with that, and I kind of lost the thread, but there you go. All right.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. So let me it'll take me a second to share my screen here.
I want to go into the chat and look at some of those.
Yeah, there's some really interesting questions, so I'm excited to go through those.
I was trying to answer some. I was trying to answer some on the go, but it was just getting too many there.
So if I may jump in, just the common thread that maybe you can address, and then Matthew, from the chat that I've been monitoring, is the idea of going together to these meetings instead of individually, people who live in the same riding. So that maybe if you can share your thoughts, and then maybe Matthew and I can share how EDC can support that.
Sure, absolutely. Actually, that was in some notes that I made to myself, that if you can go with more than one person that's in the riding, it's much better to have a few people to go with you. not only is it easier to sort of carry the load with somebody else, but it just shows the level of support rather than you showing up on your own. So if you can come with the, head of an environmental group that's running, or a youth group, or a ratepayer group, or just, other people that are with you, upset about this, definitely. But you do want to make sure that the people that come with you are going to be respectful and are going to be calm, and not get crazy, because then that will reflect on you. So you need to sort of make sure that there's some ground rules with the people that are going to come on with you. But I definitely think it's much better to have more than one if you can.
Yeah, that's
And
really.
Matthew, I'm sorry, Matthew, maybe we can share how we can support this by
Yeah.
bringing people together. Maybe you
Yeah,
can
so I
address
think
that.
there are some privacy concerns. We don't want to just connect everyone directly based on whether we know where your postal code is. But if you want to send us an email saying, I'm really interested in this, I'm in this riding, then we will connect the people who want to be connected in that riding. I'm pretty sure that we have enough people in the volunteer program that there are going to be a couple of people in each riding. So if you are interested in that, please do that. You can also try right now in the chat saying what riding you're in, and then you can send your email address to anyone else who's in your riding, and we could connect right here. And if you don't find someone today, send us an email and we'll try to connect you up with other people. So I'm gonna just share a couple more slides, and there is one that has our email address in it. So the goal is now, after our meeting, is for everyone to sort of request the appointment fairly soon. It might take a while to get an appointment. So in the next week or two, try to make a request, maybe quickly review your MP's Facebook, as Deb suggested, do a bit of research and sort of craft your email or your call so that you can make that connection with them. But do try to get the process of making an appointment going soon. And if you aren't given an appointment or you don't hear back, it's perfectly reasonable to follow up, especially with the staff in the office. You can follow up if you haven't heard back after a week or so. And then once you do have an appointment, you can review the training. We'll have this video recorded and we'll have it available. But you can also set up a one-on-one chat with Suzanne or myself by emailing volunteers@Environmental Defense. If you have some questions, if you have some more ideas you want to bounce off of us, if there's something you think your MP might raise that you want to know a good response for, bring those questions to us. We're happy to sort of meet with you and prepare for your meeting. And then have the meeting. And then we're going to send out, it'll probably take people a while to get meetings and have the meetings, but maybe in a month or so, the people who came to this training, we're going to send out a form asking for feedback on both how the training went and how your meeting went. So we'll gather that together, and we'll get a sense. It'll help us as well to know how effective this is, what people wish they had known, that kind of thing. So you'll be expecting a feedback form from us. And if you haven't gotten the meeting yet, that's okay. When you get the feedback form, just let us know. Oh, I'm still waiting. It's next month, that kind of thing. So don't worry too much about that. But then you can also use that volunteers@Environmental Defense to try to set up a group for your riding. So send us an email if you're interested in seeing if other people in your riding want the same sort of group meeting. And then
So
the other
Matt,
thing to think. Yeah.
Sorry, Matt. Sorry, no, I didn't mean to cut in. Go ahead, you finish, and then I'll cut, and then I'll have go at it.
Yeah. So the one other thing is you might want to have a leave behind of some kind. We considered making a leave behind for you, but I was talking with Deb, and in general, it's better the more you're coming as a representative of your community or as an individual, rather than I'm part of the Environmental Defense Volunteer Program and we're all doing the same thing, right? So what you do want is to have your concrete ask sort of spelled out in your leave behind. You want to have some sources. I've got a bunch of options here of like news articles and stuff, and we can put these links in the chat. That would be good. You might want to print out an article from the Star that you think they should be aware of. You might want to find the council decision opposing the highway in your area, that kind of thing, and sort of have a little package that you can leave behind with them to look at. And again, if you want, you can email us and we can help you put one of these together. But we didn't want to make like a formulaic one that everyone will use. So now we're going to open up for other questions. I'm also going to stop recording in case people don't want to be in the video that's going to go online. So we'll have a nice kind of casual chat, and we'll try to go through some of the questions in the chat there, and we'll have people raise their hands as well. So you'll be able to feed us some questions, Suzanne, from the chat?
Yeah, so a lot of it was around the collaboration, which I think after this meeting, we'll follow up with the attendees.